Excellent. Well, from an OG cypherpunk to modern cypherpunks, this next talk is another all-star panel. We will be talking about on-chain privacy. Where are we going? Our moderator is Claire Cart, and we have two founders of Ethereum, as a part of the panel. So round of applause, please.
Thanks so much. Thank you all so much. I'm Claire Cart. I'm the CMO to Aztec. We're Privacy First L2 and joined by my panelists, 3 Vitalics. So wish me luck. You know, I'm up against greatness times 3. Okay, given the masks, I'm going to let you guys briefly introduce yourselves as you wish to be known. So start here. Go ahead.
I am speaker number 1.
Yeah, speaker number 2 associated with Ironfish, a layer 1 cryptocurrency chain.
Make communism great again.
Okay, sounds good. So we have some mystery brewing. Maybe through their answers, you'll get a sense of who they actually are, or maybe they'll be so kind as to tell you. So what we want to discuss today is on-chain privacy, kind of like where it's going and where it stands today. I think there's a lot of really complex parts of this, right? It touches like kind of audiences in our industry, like cypherpunk versus maybe, you know, onboarding more mainstream users. It touches regulations. It just touches so many topics. So hopefully we'll have a chance to get into all of them. I guess like I'd like to start just by hearing from each of you, like what exact part of on-chain privacy are you working on, and you know, kind of what's been your experience as a builder in on-chain privacy?
Yeah, so we're working on Oxbow, which we provide ASPs, association sets, and privacy pools as well.
Yeah, at Ironfish, we are working on a layer 1 chain. We're fully live on mainnet and recently launched a bridge with Chainport. You can transfer fully private USDC. You guys can give it a shot. Yeah, feel free to check it out on our website.
Yeah, I work with the esteemed colleague, speaker number 1, on Oxbow, launching privacy pools. It's on the testnet right now, as of today. You can go to testnet.privacypools.com and use Sepolia ETH, and it's a private money protocol that keeps out the terrorists.
Okay. Next question, you know, I think like being in the space and thinking about like fully transparent block space, the idea of privacy can be like a little bit of maybe a difficult construct to think about. Like, how do those things work together? So could you tell me a little bit about just like your perspective on why on-chain privacy is important, and maybe also like how you're approaching it? And I'm going to start down at the end with speaker 3.
Well, we wanted to do payroll on the blockchain. And so one of the first private payment systems that launched on Ethereum was called Tornado Cash. And this launched because everybody in Ethereum was jealous of Zcash, and we thought it was silly that all of your payment history and transactions are public. Every time you pay someone, they know how much you have, and you know how much they make. So that didn't make a lot of sense to us. So Moloch DAO, which was like a punk rock DAO, helped give the grants to Tornado Cash, and they launched that. And then, like, this was back when ETH was $100. We did it because we wanted it, and the unfortunate downstream effects of this were that lots of, you know, North Korea hacked a video game, Axie Infinity, for $500 million, and then started putting hundreds of millions of dollars into our privacy system. And so then we had to do a lot of self-reflection on how we design these things. Tornado Cash built a compliance tool that they don't get enough credit for. It allowed you to reveal which deposit actually belonged to you. And despite the St. Louis Fed publishing a paper recommending the usage of this compliance tool, the legal action was taken against them anyway. And so now we have learned more techniques for trying to keep the illicit funds out of our privacy systems, because we want to have privacy for the good guys. And so that's what we're doing at Oxbow.
Nice. Speaker 2.
Yeah, I would say that's an interesting question. We also want to make things as usable for users as possible, but the same thing for us is trying to keep out the bad actors. With the bridge that we launched, it was very important to us that we have the ability to filter out the hackers. So basically, the bridge provider that we use to go to our chain before you can do privacy funds actually does a lot of automated detection for hacked wallets and such to prevent transfer. And I guess the other point I wanted to mention as well is our chain is a UTXO-based chain. It's similar to Bitcoin or Zcash. It's a privacy-based chain. But what we found is that, like, to do programmability and to do some interesting things related to privacy, we wanted to have an EVM associated with it as well. So we've been working to some extent to put an EVM on our chain as well so that we can interop with all the other types of chains that are out there and potentially other bridge providers as well.
Okay, and last, Speaker 1.
Yeah, I don't think I really have much more to add. Speaker 3 provided
enough.
pretty good context.
Yeah, you guys are working on the same project. Okay, we talked a little bit about kind of like the situation with on-chain compliance, and Speaker 3, you mentioned how, in your first iteration of building it, you sort of had some reflections. I guess, can you all sort of talk about like the approach that you're taking and what some of like the risks are, generally speaking, like as founders and builders, just in terms of like our current regulatory environment?
Yeah, well, obviously there's quite a bit of risk given that previous developers who worked in the same space have gone to prison. So, but I think with the current regulatory climate, it seems to be kind of like open season now, but I don't know, I don't want to speak too soon. But all I know is that most of the legal work we spent a whole lot of time putting in is made obsolete essentially with the new now that Trump's in office.
And sorry, what do you mean by open season when you say that? Like,
Well, I think that crime is legal now, isn't it? I'm just kidding. I mean, I think that now we're starting to see legislation that actually makes sense, or at least rolling back a lot of the laws and the previous regulation that was kind of haphazardly put into place. It seems like our regulators are actually listening to us to a certain extent now, and we're looking forward to working with policymakers to help inform a sensible approach to privacy, as well as larger, cryptocurrency, like lobbying activities.
Yeah, I'll expand on that a little bit. So when Roman, Storm, and Alexei made Tornado Cash, the Netherlands went after Alexei 2 days after the United States sanctioned the Tornado Cash program. It's the only program in history that was considered a terrorist. It seems like there was probably some collaboration between those jurisdictions. And then 1 year later, Roman Storm was arrested at gunpoint at 6 in in front of his daughter at his house. And this is despite complying with the ongoing investigation. The director of the FBI said that, we will get you shadowy coders wherever you are. And it's like he was just complying, right? And in the aftermath of this, thanks to Joseph and Preston Van Loon with the backing of Coinbase, for example, they sued OFAC, and it was ruled in court that the OFAC could not have actually sanctioned Tornado Cash to begin with because they didn't have the jurisdiction, the authority to do so. They can only sanction people or their property, and they determined Tornado Cash was not property. And separately, the judge who, in the pre-ruling on the Tornado Cash case, talked about how the relayer is a money services business, and this is part of why they're going after him for running an unlicensed money services business. And through the good work of, for example, Jake Chervinsky and the DeFi Education Fund, they submitted an amicus brief which is like when an outside lawyer also contributes to a case, and it explains that in the entire history of money services business, rulings, there has never once been a case where custody was not involved. And so we're optimistic that there will be better regulations around these aspects of both privacy protocols and the rest of DeFi so that developers, especially American developers, can work, build here, and build businesses that contribute to the well-being of Americans. You know, we like to say privacy is also self-defense. You don't want, you know, your entire database getting hacked by China, and then China knows all of your transactions, and that's not very good for American citizens. And so if the US government can't protect all of our data, then we should allow citizens to protect themselves. And I think that's where we come from with our approach to privacy.
Thank you. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about like maybe the dichotomy in the industry of, you know, we're all here, we're at a crypto conference. I think the idea of this like kind of cypherpunk version of privacy is very, like we all know what that means. But we also know that not everybody thinks about privacy that way, right? Like kind of in this more binary, like really sort of hardcore way. And I'm curious how you guys as builders in the space think about, you know, more like a normie version of privacy, or just how to make privacy not seem more appealing, but, you know, like how do you kind of balance all of these things where you don't want to be known as like the crime chain, right? And so you have to do a lot of different things. And then how do you kind of think about this idea that maybe privacy is just for criminals or just for sort of hardcore like cypherpunks?
I mean, as Hat says it, privacy is normal. I don't think that privacy is something that's like cypherpunk. I think it's something that my grandma wants. Nobody wants to see what their transactions. I don't want my bank isn't just by default open, right? So I don't think it's absurd, and I don't think it's like a hard sell to convince people that privacy is like a good thing and a human right.
Yeah, I would add to that as well. I think the current privacy solutions are actually they get a lot of flack because they're difficult to use. Like a lot of them are, the tech is there, but from a user standpoint, I agree. I think that it should be transparent to the user. It should just happen automatically. And we're doing things in the industry to try and make that the case, but it's just a technical challenge that we have to overcome. There are certain things in Ironfish that we've done, particularly where you can have a trade-off where it's a better user experience with slightly less privacy, or you know, if you want to have full privacy, then basically you need to do a little bit more work as a user.
Okay, so I'm curious on that. You have these different kind of options for privacy. So do you have any information or data on like what people choose? Do they choose like the full privacy with the maybe worse user experience, or do they choose sort of the lesser privacy with a better user experience?
Well, I would say that we're relatively young as a chain, and so we've been targeting people who are very invested in privacy and the concept of privacy. And so everybody that is using it is like basically doing full privacy because that's what they're interested in. But I think from a user's perspective, I can imagine my parents using privacy, and you know, they're not going to really care if some centralized service is hosting their view key so that they can potentially see those transactions. They just care that the product is easy to use and that it safeguards their data against people who are trying to scam them.
Yeah, I think as hacks and breaches of data become more prevalent, people might start appreciating basically services that cannot get hacked and reveal your information. Like if you use Coinbase for privacy, for example, any support engineer at Coinbase, you can bribe them, give them $1,000, and get the entire transaction history, and then you know everything. So I don't think that's a great system.
Yeah, okay, you guys mentioned, well, Speaker 3, you just mentioned hacks, and I think it's on everyone's mind, like the Bybit hack that happened last week. Obviously, there's a few things there that I think intersect with on-chain privacy. You know, first of all, like, could it be less easy to target these kind of like whales than, you know, the multi-sigs, like for the social engineering? In the case of Bybit, that's not how it was done, but in many cases it is. So could on-chain privacy help there? And then as well, how do you all think about, you know, when the hackers want to kind of launder and wash those funds and making sure that that's not happening on your projects.
Yeah. Nat, can you stand up for a second? This guy over there, stand up, stand up. Let everybody see you.
Stand up.
Go up to this guy and tell him Kim Jong-un sucks. And you will be added to the Oxbow Privacy Pools whitelist, and you'll be able to skip the line when it launches in about 2 weeks. We're doing some in-person KYC at this event, so make sure you talk to Nat.
Does anybody else want to talk about like kind of more in the weeds of how you're thinking about, exactly that, just making sure that your chains aren't used for crime?
This is what I call the paradox of privacy, which is that if you want privacy for the good guys, you have to have surveillance so that you know who are the good guys and not. And I think Taylor Monahan, who works at MetaMask, posted a tweet that said something like, Bybit has now split up their funds across 7,000 addresses and done 10,000 transactions. And so you actually need digital forensics experts to be able to trace all of these funds, and you need to build in time delays so that you can do your own research and figure out where the funds are coming from so you can block it. And KYC systems, unfortunately, are not the end-all, be-all, because I don't really care what ID you show me, for example, if your money comes from a North Korean hack. The professional criminals use identity mules all the time. And so I think as people realize that those systems are weaker, things like privacy pools where we do transaction screening are going to be viewed more favorably.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At Ironfish, we actually did an airdrop to like 60,000 people when we launched our chain, and we did a KYC process through one of the biggest KYC providers, and I would say the automated detection did a very poor job of dealing with like these mules, like he's suggesting. And we did a lot of like manual and intentional detection on our side as developers to sort of filter out those people. But those systems are, they're rife with problems. I would agree with that.
Okay, I want to share a reflection of like something I've picked up talking to people at the conference, and then get your reactions. So we don't all need to like share our age or anything, but I'll just say I'm sort of like Gen X, maybe elder millennial, and like I find privacy like very fundamental, right? I've spoken to a lot of like younger people at the conference, maybe like Gen Z, or they're in their early 20s. And they were telling me this idea that like we're in a post-privacy world, which I found really interesting, and I just got curious about it. And their perspective was like, I grew up sharing my entire life on social media. It feels so normal to me. So much data gets hacked, and so it's sort of like almost like a nihilist view of just like there's no hope, right? There's no hope, and also it's normal now to just expect all your information to be public and online. So I wanted to get your reaction to that, because when I heard that, it really made me think, and I'm curious how like different generational views of this like could impact maybe how we build or how the technology is adopted.
I think an important thing is not necessarily privacy, but consent. If I choose to share things online, I'm doing so of my own volition. That's a consensual engagement between myself and my audience. Being forced to provide that data or share that, or not being able to, shield that and have the autonomy to determine with whom I'm sharing my data. I think those are two very different concepts. So I understand where you're coming from, and yeah, we're all hyper online, but I don't think that means that we're in a post-privacy world. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. Like, there's like some simple cases that you can imagine, like with healthcare data, for example, where, if data gets out about some test that you got done, then it's going to potentially have an effect on your ability to get healthcare or insurance. And so it's like, well, these younger kids may have not had to deal with these sorts of problems yet, so it's potential that, in the future, they're like, oh, wait, actually, I didn't want that to be public, And I think at that point, they would really be a proponent of privacy.
You remember those Canadian truckers? You remember like the protest and people that were like donating? They would like their bank accounts were shut down.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
that's
remember.
a pretty good reason why we need privacy, right?
Yeah, I'll chime in and like decentralization maxis or connoisseurs are made, not born, right? Vitalik invented Ethereum after World of Warcraft removed his Siphon Life spell from the damage component of his Warlock, and he rebelled against centralized services since then. I remember losing all of my money in Mt. Gox. And after I lost all my money in Mt. Gox, I started appreciating decentralization more. So I hope that the kids don't have to learn these lessons the hard way, but I know they will.
All right, yeah, thank you. I also found it really interesting, but I like your point, speaker one around consent, right? Like showing up on social media and doing all those things that people do that sort of make them think it's post-privacy. Like they voluntarily participated in that, and so it's quite different to like live in a situation where those things are required and you have no control over them.
Right.
So that's a really good nuance. So we're coming up at time. I want to end the panel in a little bit like more of a kind of personal or emotional note. I think because all of the challenges that privacy builders have had, like we mentioned Tornado Cash and Roman Storm, and just the industry's been under attack. You guys have kept going, you've kept building. I'm just really curious to hear like what motivates you, why you're here, why you care, if there's a personal story you want to share, because I think it is one of the hardest like niches to be building in. So yeah, if you don't mind sharing that.
I think it's only difficult because of regulatory issues that we've had, and I think it's going to get a lot better, especially with projects that have continued to build despite regulatory uncertainty. So keep at it.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. Like, I have a lot of hope with the new administration in terms of their appointmentships for these key roles. There's a lot of pro crypto people coming in, and I hope that the right thing is done relative to privacy.
So privacy is meaningful in many contexts, right? Like I was using it for payroll, tornado, things like that. And then Vitalik was using it to send money to Ukraine without the Russians figuring out how much money he's saying. And so it's useful for basically the whole spectrum. And I posted a meme because Roman Storm appealed to the Supreme Court. And the meme is like the domino meme. And it's like, me trying to pay payroll privately on chain, click, and then at the end of it, it's like the Supreme Court deciding on the fate of private money on the blockchain, right? We didn't expect any of this, and part of the reason that I think it's important for us to keep going is because I believe that Alexei and Roman had the right intentions. They built the compliance tool. The stuff that we've been building in privacy pools is an extension of those compliance tools that they built to the next iteration. And so I think it's important for us to stand up and say, we've been trying to build tools for people to protect themselves. This has always been what we've been trying to do, and this is still what we're trying to do.
Amazing. I love that. Just long-term commitment. I think all of you are really, you're in it for the right reasons, so to speak. And I think that goes for most privacy builders in the space. Okay, well, we're at time, so I just want to thank panelists 1, 2, and 3 so much, the 3 Vitaliks. And yeah, round of applause. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.